Well, the key figures or the key decision makers. Or the key, yeah.
I guess that's more of a direct. Usually, I shy away from that language because people will say, "Well, there are no decision makers."
No, but that's true. But also, you could argue that they have nothing at stake, right? I mean, I think stakeholder that it's someone who has.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, but
who do you think are the key decision makers in protocol development?
The key decision makers are
in Bitcoin Cash and in Bitcoin BTC.
I think in Bitcoin these are Gregory Maxwell and Peter Todd.
Yeah,
clearly, and I think in Bitcoin Cash, an important role is for Amaury Fischer, and I think also from the other implementations, there's Tom Harding and Andrew Stone have a good role in that.
Okay, so very much developers.
Yeah, developers.
Okay. People talk about the Bitcoin community.
Yeah.
How would you define that? It's like a very vague. It's a very vague term in a way.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I think because also Bitcoin isn't really relatively small. I think that almost everyone who actually uses Bitcoin is also active in the community in some way. I mean, of course, there's a lot of people who just buy Bitcoin as an investor and then don't do it, but people who more actively use it, those are the community, I think.
Okay, so users, active users.
Users, yeah.
Okay. What do you think the core values of the Bitcoin community are? And again, I note here that there may be a difference between Bitcoin BTC and Bitcoin Cash.
The core values of the community. It's a tricky question. Can you explain a little bit what you mean with that question?
Well, for example, for you, the purpose of Bitcoin is to have decentralized cash, right? So that's kind of like, you seem to emphasize, you came to Bitcoin at first because of decentralization.
Yeah.
If I were to interpret your answer, I would say that for you came to it for decentralization.
Yeah.
So here, the question is, what do you think the rest of the people in Bitcoin are here for?
Yeah, I also think that the entire community I think the community values decentralization and values. It's a bit of an anti-government community also. I don't share that very much, but of course a lot of anarcho-capitalists in there. And so it's really like the community values, I wouldn't say destroying, but at least circumventing the existing systems and the existing power structures. I think there's what you see is there's a difference between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and I don't know if that's interesting here.
Absolutely, totally.
I think that for Bitcoin what you see is that the part of the community really also values not just the power structures, but also corporations to circumvent them and attack them. And I think that Bitcoin Cash community tends to more value also the contributions of businesses and corporations are just should be part of it. Everyone should embrace it.
That's
in Bitcoin, with the Bitcoin world, you see more that people think like, okay, to make it decentralized, then it has to be really like individuals only.
Yeah.
And cyberpunks only. And there's a bit of a difference there in view, I guess.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. People talk about decentralization, and they also talk about consensus. Not in the consensus mechanisms, but in terms of like reaching social consensus around protocol change.
Yeah.
Both of these terms are also quite vague, right? Decentralization is, in my opinion, is something that there are many different dimensions in which something can be decentralized.
Yeah.
How do you understand decentralization and consensus?
Yeah, I think that what decentralization can be either a bit of a binary thing, like it is decentralized or not, and that simply has to do with how the rules are built in a way without an authority. Like, okay, Bitcoin is decentralized or Nutella is decentralized, and even if only me and you would still be using Nutella, then it would still be decentralized because it's defined that way. It's defined without an authority. Everyone can join, and so that's the binary definition.
Right.
And then there's also quantification, of course, and quantification has more to do like, how many entities. I think a good way to define that quantification is to say, okay, how many distinct entities must be compromised in order to compromise the network.
I see.
And so, like, okay, how small is the club that basically forms the majority, or in case of Bitcoin, the majority hashing power. So that would be a quantification of that.
Okay, that's a cool definition. What about consensus? Because again, people say, well, for example, Bitcoin Core, they say we're going to make a change only when we have consensus about something.
Yeah, I think that's a really strange reversal. I think that one of the key innovations of Bitcoin is actually that it has a way to ensure consensus, to enforce consensus.
Right.
And so it's essentially a consensus mechanism.
Right.
And this is often confused with, okay, but we need consensus in order to change something. No, the protocol enforces consensus. And that doesn't mean consensus, it doesn't mean what you say, it has more meanings, because we also use it for a protocol change.
Yeah.
Like, okay, is there consensus among the developers?
Right.
We actually try to avoid this term now. We try to talk about, is there agreement?
Right. Okay, I didn't know that this was there was a concerted effort to change the kind of.
It's a bit confusing because there's, of course, it's a really different thing. You want developers to agree with something before we actually add it to the implementations.
Yeah.
And there's the consensus mechanism of Bitcoin, which is what actually enforces this consensus thing.
Okay, cool. What is your opinion of the role of node operators, miners, developers, and exchange operators in protocol development?
I think I would like to see, they are in the end the stakeholders, or represent the stakeholders, and they represent stakeholders, better to say. And I would like to see them active. We would like to listen to them. But what we see in the community is that they often trust developers. So they give some feedback, but they often have something like, okay, what these developers are doing is probably going to be okay.
And you think that this applies across both Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin?
Certainly, yes.
Okay.
We also see that in Bitcoin Cash that we would like to, we like really to have these people involved, but they also just want developers to come to agreement with something, and then it will probably be good.
Okay, well, I'm going to circle back to this a bit in a later section, but I think I'd want to raise a couple of questions on this. So for you, now I'm going to talk more about protocol developments and this process per se. For you, how do you understand Bitcoin governance? How would you define it? And do you even agree with the term? Because a lot of people, you talk about Bitcoin governance and they flinch and they think there is no such thing. So for you, what does it mean?
I think I kind of agree with the last one. Bitcoin, you could say in one way that the miners govern the protocol.
Miners?
Yes, they govern. I would argue that they govern the protocol because they decide in the end of the rules that are used for their blocks they make.
Right.
So in that sense, they decide. Even if there's multiple rules, they will always decide on these rules.
Right.
And I think the term Bitcoin governance is a little bit difficult because we see already in the earlier questions that it encompasses a lot of things, and so there's not really one answer like what is Bitcoin governance. It's more like it has a lot of different components, I guess.
Okay. So how does protocol change take place? How is it agreed on?
It's a difficult question because I think it is still really very much still like a work in progress. I think there's a lot of people working and thinking about how we can streamline this, how we can do this better.
Right.
Personally, I think what currently happens is somebody proposes something and it's being discussed.
Sorry, this is in the context of which chain?
I think in both chains.
Okay.
Somebody proposes something and it's becoming discussed, and if there's general agreement over that between developers, then it gets in. That's the basic idea. But of course, the difficulty is when there's not agreement.
Okay.
I'm personally really in the camp that I'm a bit of a change minimalist. I think the basics is already very good. So I think that if there's not real broad agreement, then we should just skip it and try something else. So
you're fairly conservative in a sense.
Very conservative
about protocol change.
Yes, I think that if there's some serious criticism on one proposal, then instead of trying, okay, is this better? Is with proposal better than without a proposal? And we should really say, okay, there's some criticism, then just skip it, drop it, forget it, and we try something else.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on having multiple implementations?
I think this is a very powerful thing because I believe that an individual